The foreigners would insist that everything was absolutely normal when Hannah went downstairs at midnight and that the fire in their oven was definitely out. But they would say that, wouldn't they?
Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're taking a closer look at people and groups throughout history who are responsible for or exacerbated major disasters around the world, leading to fatalities and environmental catastrophes.
Around the beginning of the 1960s, between 15 and 30 million people in China, mostly living in the rural areas, die of hunger.
The Dorado Fire, Angelina Rene Jimenez, and Refugio Manuel Jimenez Jr. What was meant to be a celebration erupted into a mass wildfire.
The wind-driven fire is being blamed on a gender reveal party that went wrong.
In 2020, Angelina Rene Jimenez and Refugio Manuel Jimenez Jr. released a smoke device for a gender reveal party at the El Dorado Ranch Park in California. However, the stunt caused the surrounding dry grass to ignite during a week of already scorching temperatures.
Overnight video shows the threat from the El Dorado fire that has been burning in Yucaipa and the San Bernardino National Forest for 6 days now. With thousands of acres already torched, thousands more people have had to evacuate.
A fire took hold and it wreaked havoc for 71 days, causing more than $42 million in damage. One firefighter sadly lost their life as they combated the blaze. In 2024, Refugio pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including involuntary manslaughter.
Gender reveal party sparked the deadly 2020 El Dorado fire in Yucaipa has been sentenced after reaching a plea deal.
He was sentenced to 1 year in jail, followed by 2 years of probation. Angelina pleaded guilty to other charges and received 1 year of probation. They were also ordered to pay nearly $1.8 million in restitution. The crash of Germanwings Flight 9525. Andreas Lubitz. In 2015, Germanwings Flight 9525 left Spain's Barcelona El Prat airport for Germany's Dusseldorf airport.
A plane is reported to have gone down over the southern French Alps. It's operated by Germanwings, an A320 Airbus.
However, shortly into the journey, the plane rapidly descended as attempts by air traffic control to contact the pilots were unsuccessful. The flight crashed near the commune of Praut-Bléon in the French Alps. There were no survivors of the 150 people on board. Investigators soon discovered that the co-pilot, Andreas Lubitz, was responsible.
Devastating carnage, prosecutors now say, was deliberately caused by 27-year-old co-pilot Andreas Lubitz.
Lubitz had locked himself alone in the cockpit and deliberately crashed the plane. It was found that a doctor had written Lubitz off work for his mental health shortly before the disaster. However, Lubitz didn't tell his employers, and German law had banned the doctor from independently informing them.
The claim that Lubitz crashed the plane has raised questions about how airlines screen pilots for mental health issues.
The Great Flood of 1993, James Scott. After extremely heavy rainfall and storms in April 1993, a massive flood began in the Midwestern United States when multiple rivers overflowed.
The data shows the stage was actually set for this mess back in 1992 with a very wet fall season. Then in 93, some areas received more than 4 feet of rain between April and October.
Lasting until October, 50 people lost their lives to the water, and there was up to $16 billion worth of damage, around $30 billion in today's money. One of the states affected was Illinois, but if it wasn't for the actions of James Scott, it might not have been quite as bad as what ultimately happened.
Within minutes of this tragedy, to see that the first person on the scene being interviewed on television was someone that all of local law enforcement were quite familiar with. They thought this is beyond coincidence to be at the scene of a major catastrophe.
Living in the city of Quincy, Scott was found to have deliberately removed sandbags meant to contain the flood, breaking a vital levee by doing so. He was found to have done it because he wanted to strand his wife far away from home so that he could party without her and conduct affairs. In 1994, after trial, Scott was sentenced to life in prison. In 1998, his conviction was reinstated.
I've lost so much as a result of this case. I mean, I've lost so much. Half my life in prison.
The Johnstown Flood, the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club. In May 1889, the South Fork Dam on Lake Conemaugh in Pennsylvania collapsed, flooding around 3.8 billion gallons of water into nearby Johnstown and the surrounding area.
This is the precise moment that the dam upstream from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, breaks.
The devastation was massive as more than 2,200 people lost their lives. There was $17 million worth of damage, equivalent to around $583 million today. The dam was owned by and was supposed to be maintained by the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club, which had several influential industrialist members, including Andrew Carnegie.
When he bought the dam, he made the critical mistake of removing a lot of the sluice pipes
from the bottom of the dam. And these sluice pipes were actually a critical feature because they allowed the reservoir to be drained if ever there was a danger of a flood.
However, subsequent investigations found that the club had neglected it, had made poor alterations, and had ignored warnings from residents who noticed issues. No one in the club was ever held legally responsible, but it is generally thought that a better-kept dam might have held back the catastrophe.
Although the club was never officially penalized for what happened, the facts are clear. They neglected their responsibilities just to suit their lavish needs, ignoring the precarious state of the dam.
The Bengal famine of 1943. Winston Churchill. Back in 1943, Bengal, across parts of India and Bangladesh, was under the rule of Great Britain.
He might be an icon in Britain, but in India, he is seen actually as the precipitator of mass killing because of the policies that he advocated.
In the years before 43, an intense drought had led to massive crop failures all over the region. This, plus the other natural disasters and the ongoing Second World War, combined to inflict a deadly famine. It's believed that up to 3.8 million people died from starvation, malnutrition, and other related issues.
আমাকেও অনাহারে আমার ফ্যামিলিকে কাটাতে হয়েছে এবং কঙ্কাল সার দেহ মানুষের সেই অবস্থা দেখলে ভয় লাগে একটা মানুষকে দেখলে যে মানুষ না এটা প্রেতাত্মা।
Winston Churchill, the then Prime Minister of Britain, is widely condemned for his role in how the disaster unfolded. When asked to divert food resources to Bengal, he refused, and he repeatedly argued that the citizens of Bengal were to blame for the famine they were facing. In 2019, researchers concluded that Churchill's refusal to help was a major factor in the devastation, and history remembers the wartime leader's prejudice and racism as being a major contributor to the decisions he took.
But I don't think we can blame Churchill for causing it. What we can say is that he didn't alleviate it or send relief when he had the ability to do so. We can blame him for prioritizing white lives and European lives over South Asian lives.
The Great Fire of London, Thomas Fariner. In 1666, for 4 September days, London, England was ablaze, with the city's Lord Mayor Thomas Bloodworth hesitating over what to do. Thousands of buildings were destroyed, with an estimated damage equivalent today to around £2.2 billion, or $2.7 billion.
He could have pulled down private houses, created a fire break, but those houses belonged to rich merchants who'd put him in power, and he didn't want to be unpopular. It's always politics.
Regarding fatalities, few are recorded officially, but there are estimates that it might have been in the hundreds, possibly thousands. At the time, there was conflict and diplomatic tension between England and France, and one Robert Hubert, who was originally from France, was blamed for the fire and was executed.
Robert Hubert paid the ultimate price and was hanged at Tyburn Gallows on the 29th of October, 1666. The Great Fire of London had claimed yet another victim.
However, he was likely a scapegoat, and although he confessed, his confession was inconsistent and he wasn't thought to be of sound mind. One of Hubert's accusers was Thomas Fariner, who owned the bakery where the fire began. Today, many believe that Fariner was really to blame. That improper cleaning and a failure to ensure the fire was extinguished in his oven was what truly caused the tragedy.
We now believe the most likely cause of the Great Fire was a stray ember, which ignited a pile of twigs stored in the bakehouse. Unnoticed, it started to take hold.
The Deepwater Horizon oil spill, BP leadership team. Operated by Transocean to drill oil for BP, Deepwater Horizon was an offshore rig based off the Louisiana coast. In April 2010, a blowout and uncontrolled release of gas or oil sparked a massive explosion, followed by a raging fire.
The U.S. Coast Guard received a mayday from the bridge and flashed this distress call.
The Deepwater Horizon on fire. With all persons off the vessel, the person in the water.
11 people lost their lives and huge amounts of oil spilled into the Gulf of Mexico, causing one of the world's biggest ever environmental disasters. BP was heavily criticized for not only its leadership's response after the event, but also for its procedures that contributed to the initial explosion.
BP had an opportunity to explain to the American people, and quite frankly, they blew it. He was going to do whatever he could to protect the company.
Engineers on the rig had reportedly told their safety concerns to higher-ups only to be ignored. In 2014, a judge deemed BP had major responsibility for what happened. In 2015, the company agreed to an estimated $19 billion settlement.
Describing the oil giant's role in the disaster, a U.S. judge has ruled that BP was grossly negligent and reckless.
Holodomor, Joseph Stalin. In 1930, while leading the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin's rapid industrialization and collectivization of food and crops led to mass shortages throughout the empire.
The famine hit several parts of the Soviet Union from 1932 to 1933, but in Ukraine, it became known as the Holodomor, a term meaning death by starvation.
From 1932 until 1933, the famine struck in a particularly merciless way in Ukraine, becoming known as the Holodomor. According to historians, Stalin had, at the time, feared an independence movement in the country, and so many believe he manipulated the already harsh Soviet policies to specifically target Ukraine and make the famine worse.
In 1931, Stalin deliberately set quotas for grain production that were far beyond the capacity of farmers across the Soviet Union. When farmers failed to meet those quotas, Stalin's men swept their farms to confiscate all the grain they could find.
Villagers were blocked by Soviet officials from searching for supplies further afield and threatened with the prospect of labor camps if they didn't comply with the brutal collectivization drive. Up to 10 million people perished, according to the UN. In 2022, the European Parliament recognized the Holodomor as a genocide enacted by Stalin. Dozens of other countries have also made that distinction.
The European Parliament has voted to recognize the Ukraine famine of the 1930s as a deliberate genocide by Soviet Russia. MEPs voted by 507 votes for to 12 against to approve the motion.
The Great Leap Forward, Mao Zedong. In 1958, to turn China from an agricultural society into an industrialized one, in order to take on the economies of capitalist nations, China's leader Mao Zedong initiated the infamous Great Leap Forward campaign.
Mao's ideology is penetrating deeper and deeper into the everyday lives of the people. The party leader thinks that industrial development is happening too slowly. He orders a great leap forward. China should soon be producing more steel than Great Britain, with the sheer willpower of the people alone.
However, it didn't have a positive result. Instead, due to the sheer impossibility of what it demanded, it facilitated the Great Chinese Famine, resulting in the demise of up to 55 million people. Local officials had seen the devastating effect that Mao's policies were having on communities.
Instead of the envisioned economic boom, there is famine.
Yet due to fear of repercussions from Mao, they said nothing, exaggerated crop production figures, and took or withheld food from the workers. The problem grew and grew until in 1962, the Great Leap Forward was finally halted. The disaster forced Mao to give more responsibility to other leaders, such as then-President Liu Shaoqi and then Vice Premier Deng Xiaoping. Ultimately, it's remembered as one of the most disastrous chapters in modern human history.
Now is the Rega generation 70. I hope that they reflect, they regret, they re-examine what should we prevent this kind of human tragedy happen again.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. The Trail of Tears, Andrew Jackson. After becoming the 7th President of the United States in 1929, Andrew Jackson soon got to work on the Indian Removal Act.
In 1829, Andrew Jackson was elected U.S. President. He believed that Native Americans had no rights to their land and began proceedings to remove the Cherokee from the southern states.
At the time, several southern states wanted the land that Native American tribes resided upon, even more so when some areas were found to have gold. So in 1930, Jackson narrowly got his act passed through Congress.
Up to a third of the 15,000 Cherokee who were forced to make the journey died on the way, which is one reason that journey came to be known as the Trail of Tears.
This gave him the power to relocate native tribes to west of the Mississippi River, including the Cherokee, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Muskogee, and Seminole nations. Between 1830 and 1850, what history remembers as the Trail of Tears saw around 60,000 people displaced and entire cultures belittled and ransacked. Estimates are that on the journey, more than 16,500 perished. Today, some view the Removal Act as genocide, others as ethnic cleansing.
What we did in the 1830s to the southeastern Indians, it's ethnic cleansing.
What's your verdict on the role and disaster that these people or groups played? Let us know in the comments.